All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, Heath, we've got Wheel of Time, Gathering Storm. We've got Sanderson's mat, so I went ahead with a different hat this time. And I'm gonna have to ditch the glasses though, because I can't see anything.
Sorry, I don't have the long locks to go. All right, brother, and
All
Hulk
right,
hogan it up with you.
here
Because
we have Macho Man Randy Savage, who's done on 180, 180, and then another 360, 360. Oh, I had to practice that so much when I did my Macho Man Halloween. I stayed in character all night though.
that's gotta be
People
hard on the voice.
Oh yeah, I couldn't talk for 3 days. But people were like, "Oh, I know who you are, you Macho Man." And I was like, "Oh, always good to see a fan. Oh, I just really I like being appreciated."
Okay, brother.
Okay,
Um,
brother.
all right. We are on chapter 19, which is a Tuan chapter. Every chapter is a different person, which is again slowing us down, but also there's quite a bit going on. I reckon we'll get through 4 chapters again. But the last one's a doozy, like last time, so we're probably gonna have to stop and spend some time on it.
I've got a
Um,
lot to say on the Matt chapter.
and then there's the Matt chapter. Yeah. Not an accident, I think, that we get Tuan, and of course she's thinking about Matt, and then we get Matt. Matt's thinking about Tuan, and then Perrin, and then Rand. So because these kind of these parallel storylines are running together. I think I said this right when or right before we started that the last 3 books are like one giant climax, giggity, because the last handful of chapters in all the other books, uh, knife, well, most of the other books, I'd say starting with Crossroads, it kind of takes on a, a bit of a different flow, but up through Winter's Heart you have these several storylines, especially in the early part, and they are all converging. The most obvious one is, or well, obvious ones, the Great Hunt and then the Dragon Reborn. Our main characters all get separated, and then they all converge back together for the climax. And that's basically what is happening through the whole of these 3 books. Is they've been off for a long while doing their own thing, and now finally the 3 main characters are coming back together, and it's about dang time, and still takes too long and is unsatisfying. But we'll get there when we get there. Um, Chapter 19, I thought is pretty good. He does a good job of writing Tawan. Um,
Let me say something really quick first, because I'm looking at the comments and I wanted to catch this at the beginning,
oh
and
yeah.
I forgot about it until I looked at them again. Ideals are isomorphic. Uh, I'm surprised you read so fast and caught up to us. But if you are still not done, there is something about your comment I want to say, but it's going to be in spoilers. So if you want to finish and then go back to these spoilers from this episode, I do have something to say about your comment. But he's talking about the Shanshin Code of Honor and intricacies and having
Mm-hmm.
to learn yet another custom base. And well, we got another one coming up. But Shanshin, we pretty much get in this chapter. There's nothing new here. Yeah, she's talking about their culture and everything, but we've kind of already got an idea, and you never get more than a surface level idea of Shanshin customs. So I do think that you're at least through the worst of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think that's why another storyline later didn't quite work because it introduced another culture very suddenly and very quickly. Uh, but let's see if any of the other comments are relevant to before it says the because I responded. I was gonna say it says 5 comments, but let's see. Scott.
Um,
He doesn't know what they get from interrogating Semiraj. They should have stilled her immediately. She was
mhm.
nothing.
I think the main one that they say is, um, uh, who of the Forsaken are still alive and where are they? That seems to be the main ones. And then akin to that is what is the overall plan? What is the grand plan of the Dark?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, realistically, nobody of this age even understands, other than maybe Herod Fell, who's dead, understands the Dark One himself. I mean, if you got to know thy enemy, right?
Hmm.
It's the soul. We've seen that the spirit and Telleroid are tied. This isn't that this place is Soul and Rand's personally is unified. It is the place
Yeah.
Rand and Lucerne are fully
Right, but
integrated
that was
person.
making me wonder, okay, exactly what is that place? That makes me think it it has to be uh outside, somehow outside. That's why I thought maybe it was a
Yeah,
vacuum
and if
hole.
it was fully integrated and we're talking about a soul, he would have been fully integrated with every soul or every iteration of
Uh-huh.
the dragon. Because remember, it's Ishi himself that says we've done this hundreds and thousands of times
Right.
already. So if it was really just an integration, then he would have been kind of just flooded with knowledge of everything that he once was.
Hmm.
So I think it was something outside of time and space where he is what was already there is part of his physical being, but nothing more can come in. Uh, I thought the prevailing theory about Laris was that she was the kin's agent for helping girls leave. That's a very
I
that is I've
I
heard that
had
one,
forgotten about that. Yeah.
but it's just fun because we weren't talking about her helping people leave. We were talking about her being light on her feet for being so fat.
Yeah.
Uh, as a
Maybe she
evidence that she could be Masana or something. But yeah,
maybe she's Vanon's long lost sister.
yeah, Vanna's long lost sister. But we also get that from who else? We get the innkeeper that is with Megden Morgase.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that
Beg pardon.
description about him. We get that description about Master Alvir. You know, we kind of get that description about a lot of people. She just seems to be the fattest and sloppiest of them all,
Hmm.
other than Vannon, which I've got beef on Sanderson's writing of Vannon coming up
Yeah,
here.
we got a lot of beef in that chapter. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
brother. Oh yeah.
Okay, so
The
that's all the comments. I just wanted to
Matamania is about to run wild over you, but first we got to get through the Tawan chapter.
Yeah, I just wanted to do
Um,
that first because if he is avoiding our new subscriber is avoiding the spoilers, then I wanted to say that first.
so real quick, as we get into the Tawan chapter, when I was a kid, I was a giant dork for National Geographic, and it's the only thing that's ever interested me about Disney Plus is the fact that they own National Geographic. And while I was looking for some stuff, and I found this cool article on, I think I've referenced before, the ginormous, like I think over 200 ludicrously large junks that were made and sent out in the Ming Dynasty in the early to mid 1400s. Uh, and they made it as far as East Africa, and then they got back and said, "Yeah, the rest of the world kind of sucks and isn't nearly as awesome as we are." So they just dismantled the fleet, and that's why 2 centuries later, when Europe showed up with their gunships and said, "Hey, we're cool now," that China was backward because they kind of stopped at about this point.
But they
And
also sailed the wrong direction. had, had they gone east, my friend, they would have ended up in
well,
California.
the point was to go exploring down through Indonesia and then off into India and then East Africa, and also there was some thought of using it as a way to circumvent the Arab middlemen who were kind of the middlemen for the Silk Road and some of the other trade from China.
Well,
But
did they go further south than the Sahara? Because yeah, Ethiopia and all that's going to be really
I don't
rough. But
remember
if you
how
had
far
gone
south
south, you would have
I
they
don't
would have
remember
been.
how far south of the Horn of Africa they went, but they did come back with specimens that they must have gone some degree south because they brought back reports and maybe even specimens of animals from the Serengeti,
Because
from the Rift Valley.
okay,
So,
so they should have found some good stuff there. Of course, he
um,
didn't know how valuable cobalt would be now that they own all the
yeah.
mines in Congo. But
But
you know,
if you look at the depictions, it's one of the few things the show got right because the ships are obviously described heavily influenced by Ming Imperial China, which was kind of the height of Imperial China. Um, and there's obviously a heavy influence there with the Sanshin, and there's a cool model of what one of these great ships would have looked like, and you see the number of, and they are described with many masts and with square sails and ribbed sails, and that's what he's describing here, is he's trying to draw you this picture of what the Sanshin great ships look like, compared to um, the rakers of the sea folk, which are more traditional age of sail kind of things that we think of. But I say that to preamble that I think with this chapter with Tawan, you also get another influence, I think, consciously or unconsciously,
Here's my
with the
horse.
Sanshin. Yes, uh, is militaristic Japan. When they started to get real militaristic and expansionist in the late 1800s, um, there's a quote from C.S. Lewis that the opening of this chapter made me think of, and it is, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep, his stupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience." And that's what you get inside Tuwan's head here, is, we're doing this for your own good. And that was how the Japanese saw themselves in East Asia with the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, is where we have now become as technologically advanced as the Europeans, and we are going to throw out the white colonial Europeans. We will be the new colonial masters, but it'll be okay because we're Asian too.
Yeah, I think there's a little nuance to that discussion because I think that was the idea of the return,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how Suroth ran it, and before her, Turok ran it. I think we're starting to see in this chapter a slight transition,
Right.
and yeah, we'll
Exactly.
get to that. I don't know how much in order you want to go.
Well, my
Uh,
first note, segueing into that, is on page 302. Do you have something
okay, I'm
before then?
295 is my like right in
Okay.
the beginning. I thought it was cool her inner thoughts on uh how she grew as a person from you know basically being the target of assassinations.
Mm-hmm.
And the last sentence in that was, how do you know if you're even a powerful person if people aren't trying to kill you?
Yes, and
That's
her thoughts about General Galgan are kind of funny too, about how um she wouldn't trust him as much as she does if he wasn't plotting against her,
yeah, yeah.
basically.
Well, not only that, it's a healthy respect for your enemy in that sense because he's not an enemy, but he could be an enemy, and she has to healthily respect that. This is what I hated in the MMA circles. There were so many people that were just so cool and helpful and everything, but there was this underlying prevailing thing because it makes for good TV that this disrespect for your opponents, the Conor McGregors, the Diaz's of the world, this disrespect for your opponents. And I had a coach that was like that, that was always like, he's trying to rape your wife and he's trying to get in your house and you got to protect your family. I'm like, I don't need that. I just hate to lose.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I need.
It's
And
why the only season of The Ultimate Fighter that I actually watched all the way through was the one with the season where GSP was a coach.
he was on there twice. He
The
was a
the
coach twice.
the
First,
first time.
first time.
Yeah, because he was very much your kind of traditional martial arts sensei of, you know, I'm here to make you not just a better fighter, but a better person.
Well, KOTOR was like that too in the first season. But yeah, it's this. In fact, the best way to fight, and she understands this here, and Jordan understood it, and to some degree, Sanderson kind of almost gets it. The best way to fight is to respect your opponent.
Hmm.
Treat every opponent like they're the best fighter you're ever going to fight. And you're more likely to win than if you underestimate them or if you caricature them. Or like we see in politics now, if you straw man your opponent, they're going to hit you with something you never expected.
Hmm.
And she is obviously talking about not being assassinated for so long, mature beyond her years in that respect. Now, she sucks with social skills when it comes to, how I should talk to my husband or
Interpersonal, like,
yeah,
yeah, interpersonal
interpersonal
social
skills.
skills.
Yeah.
Her social skills in this setting are amazing. Like
Oh yeah,
when
yeah, yeah.
she's sitting up on the
Because it's
throne
in court.
and dealing with all
Yeah.
this, yeah.
When
Her,
I said social skills, I meant private skills. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because so jumping to
Oh
302.
no, one more
Oh,
before
okay.
that. Her obsession with order
Yes,
is
yes.
huge. And this is where I really drew a parallel to her and Rand, and they're kind of kindred spirits here,
Hmm.
which is why this meeting needs to happen.
Especially darker Rand.
Yeah, especially Darker Rand, but she's obsessed with order, just like he is, which makes her a parallel to Rand, but a very good compliment for Met.
Uh, Order, but more, and the analogy I was drawing with militaristic Japan was imposing order. Order is so important that if needs be, I will impose it. And that may mean very dire consequences for the individual, but it's okay because it's for the greater good.
Yeah, I still think she's a transition from that, especially in her treatment of Beslan here
Yes,
coming up.
exactly. And that's where I was going to, is that's where you start to see the nuance, and that's where you start to see kind of perhaps a bit of a tease on Jordan's part that we've been getting since we were first introduced to Tawan, that once you've closed the book and you wander off in your imagination of what is the world like after, the last page of this series, what's the world going to be like, it it might not be as bad as, or it's not going to be as bad as a dark glimpse of a potential future that we're going to see. I don't remember if it's at the end of this book or the beginning of the next book, but that's all I'll say about that. The potential future that we see, that is not good.
Well, from a
But
psychological standpoint, if you were to big five her, like we've done with some of the other
mhm,
characters, she's probably highest in conscientiousness, but also openness, which is an amazing combination. It's a very rare combination. I think it's
mhm,
probably the combination most of your great world leaders have had,
yeah,
because they're open enough to adjust, but conscientious enough to be organized and to establish order when
yeah.
it's needed.
I
And she's kind of like a female Alexander the Great here.
I've referenced it before, but if you haven't seen it, go watch Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman playing Churchill. There's a lot historically wrong with it,
I was gonna
but
watch that, but I watched Here Comes the Boom instead.
well, that we could all use a laugh. But the character of Churchill, not just the character of Churchill, but most importantly, perhaps, is his interactions with his wife. You see in a lot of ways the reason he is the way he is his interactions with his wife. And those are some of, if not the best scenes in the whole movie, is with their private time together. And you see that, you see that while he may be bombastic in public, especially in his speeches, he does have that openness. Now, in public, he will sometimes hide that openness out of political necessity. But when you see the intimate moments with his wife, you realize, oh no, actually, he does have a high degree of openness,
Hmm.
and this is why he's able to think the way he thinks.
I wonder if this is a good kind of lesson in couples, because you have to be complementary, but at the same time you can't be too different.
Hmm.
And I wonder if, like, say you take your top two, you're probably a mixture of all of them, but we'll say the top two for just simplifying the argument of your top two traits, which mine are openness and agreeableness. Well, I would say Nicole is probably somewhere with agreeableness, definitely high, and I'm high in it too, but she's probably pretty high on just like a lot of females, the neuroticism side. But to have two that are different, or one major one that's different, but one major one that's the same. And we
Hmm.
look at Matt and Tuan. She's, like I said, I diagnosed her as, even though I can't yet technically, as high in openness and conscientiousness. Well, Matt is definitely low in conscientiousness, but he is high in openness. He's super high in openness. He's
Yeah.
probably the most open person in the books. So maybe that trait, that curiosity they share together, but then they have the other trait that complements each other.
And I think you see that one of
He might be high
these,
in neuroticism too, because
yeah,
he's always looking for the
yeah.
danger, you know.
One of the decently well done things through these two chapters is the way that both of them are thinking about the other and then kind of wondering in their own mind, why the heck do I keep thinking about him, her? Well, why does this keep coming up? Why did I think that? And it's it's less it's less annoying with Tuan because you understand why she doesn't get it. Because as you said, she doesn't have those individual social skills. She doesn't know how to be a real human being in private.
Well, and she tells you
So
why. She doesn't even know her parents really.
yeah,
That was the Empress.
yeah.
That was the Empress. And everybody else in her life, even though they raised her and disciplined her and everything, were beneath her.
I seem to recall that her father was executed while she was young for plotting against her mother.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
yikes.
something along those lines. So, what did you want to talk about, Besslin? Because I have a
Yeah,
very specific thing.
the he gives. I love the whole interaction with them and in her her intelligence, as well as you do see a degree of internal compassion that she doesn't necessarily show outwardly, but she thinks while she's talking to Vesselin about how much she doesn't want to have to execute him, and not just for the real politic reasons, but because he seems like a decent person. He seems like a good man. And these people, his people, need a good man to lead them, need a good ruler. But then on page 302, he gives his vow to uh to be her vassal, basically. And Tuan let herself smile. Behind Beslan, Captain General Galgan stepped forward, addressing the king. That is not the proper way to. Tuan silenced him with a gesture. We demand that this people adopt our ways, General, she said. It is fitting that we accept some of theirs. Not too many of those ways, of course. But she could not thank her long conversations with Mistress Anon for allowing her to understand this. The Sanshin had, perhaps, made a mistake with this people in making them swear Sanshin oaths of obedience. Matrim had sworn those oaths, but ignored them handily when the time came. Yet he had been certain to keep his word to her, and his men had assured her that he was a man of honor.
I think
She,
I think that same mentality actually goes back one page though, too, because the way she frames his choice is not is the you think, oh, death or be a king, but it's done in a way of not holding a gun to his head.
yeah,
He in his mind was already dead from his actions. She's offering him a choice, knowing that there's a part of him, and this is her understanding of people, there's a part of him that actually might choose death over being a king subservient to the empire.
mm-hmm,
And that would actually be people don't understand this anymore in our soft Western culture, but there are times where death is an honorable thing in some cases.
you
You
got the
could,
hat on. Remember the Alamo, buddy.
yeah, remember the Alamo, but also in if Beslan really had a big movement going, his death would spark that,
Mm-hmm,
and he would know it, and he
mm-hmm,
would that he would be officially a martyr. People throw that term around, but that's exactly what he would have been there.
mm-hmm,
The real definition of a martyr that causes change. But she framed it in a way that was like, I understand if you want to do this. I know where you're coming from because we're honorable people.
mm-hmm.
But let me set you at ease. There is a little bit of as our commenter says, a little bit of a new culture for you here, a culture shock. Yeah, you've taken on our clothes, but at the same time, you didn't grow up in our ways.
Yeah.
So let me break it down for you. Then you make a good decision. And he was dumbfounded. He was struck by that because he was sure he was dead. That's different than saying do this or you die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She gave him choices that were both understandable and appealing to him.
Hmm.
either one. But she also knew enough to know how to show him that we are not who you think we are, or perhaps more accurately, and she might not phrase it this way, I am not who you think we are. I'm different. And that's what she's kind of starting to show and kind of starting to understand here when she thinks about her conversations with Mistress Anon. But also that the part about Matt and the oaths really jumped out at me, that it kind of boggles her minds, and she's starting to understand it without understanding the why of it, that it makes no sense to her coming from her cultural blinders, that how could you swear these oaths and then so easily and readily betray them, and yet still consider yourself a man of honor? And all of your men, all of your followers assure me that you are a man of honor. And when it came down to it, you, at great personal threat and harm to yourself, you upheld the oath that you gave to me.
Hmm.
I don't think she fully understands the why of it, but she understands there's something there. And it's simply that your oaths mean nothing to these people.
Because I'm swearing to the crystal throne by my whatever. Okay, I have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what that is.
What she just did with Beslin is why how she's able to start understanding that nuance, because she made it personal for Beslin, and she made it personal about his people and his land. She appealed to him and the goodness that she saw in him as a potentially good leader, someone who actually cared about the people that he ruled.
Go down that page just a little bit, and this is I'm gonna this is kind of an episode of the good and the bad of Sanderson. He did a good job making her more personable, fleshing her out a little bit with her hand signs to Seleucia and Seleucia's back, that was well handled, unconventional perhaps, but very delicately done. And then she felt that warm sense of pride, and we get that emotion from her, from in her own head.
Mm-hmm.
In the next chapter, we got to where Sanderson tries to do that with another character, and it was horribly flubbed. So he did it well here. I'm trying to make sure I point out the good when I point out the bad later.
Yeah.
But
So I also like that, and I've mentioned this before about Jordan and his writing as well. Um, that uh, oh, I mentioned it last time with Cadswin, and a similar thing here is she's still a person, and that means she's not perfect. So you see a few pages later, towards the end of the chapter, when General Ty Lee
no.
comes in with the heads of Trollocs, and Tuan is suddenly going, "Oh, I guess Matt was telling the truth about this. I wonder what other things weren't just silly stories and superstitions of his."
What would have been nice there when Tylee was talking about competent generals under Rand is it would have been an internal mental kind of, "Oh, yeah, I was just with one of them." Because
Mm-hmm.
Tylee doesn't know anything about Matt. She was talking about Perrin and that lot.
Yeah.
Whereas Tuan could have had a thought in her head, just a short part of a paragraph there, or the italics in that same paragraph that said, "Yeah, Matt is the best general I've ever been around.
Mm-hmm.
He'd run circles around Galgan."
Yeah, I saw it firsthand, and then
Because that would have
uh,
been some of the Matt. I wish Matt was here. Thoughts were a little forced. That would have
mhm.
been a good place to have one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, do you have any other thoughts about this chapter before we get on
Uh,
to Matt's?
no, I think we've blown that one through the water.
Yeah. Um,
All right,
all
now
right.
I have to do this because this is Sanderson's Matt. We have
So
we have to put the fate cowboy hat. I don't even know which way on this one is the front. I think the other
we're
side looks better. There we go.
all right. So the very last sentence on this page, page 311, the beginning of this chapter, this to me this just jumped right out at me and said, "Ah, okay, I can explain it technically, specifically, objectively of what the problem is with Sanderson writing Matt." This sentence right here, the very last sentence. A man, he'll cheat you, but he'll do it honestly. That is a wonderful Matt line. That is a perfect Matt line because he it sounds contradictory, but it is a paradox, and that is Matt. Matt is seemingly contradictory, but he's a paradox. Here's the problem, though. The problem is the long, meandering prologue and epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
You have basically 5 pages to say that.
Yeah, let me start with 311. My first thought on it rereading it was Sanderson kind of came in with like a modern uh Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings bantering between the hobbits kind of banter
Mm-hmm.
here, but as I was going into it, I changed my mind. It if okay, so if you're listening to this, hear me out, then pause it and read these first couple pages of chapter 20. Read Matt in Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow and Tom Inez as the straight guy.
Mm-hmm.
That read it in that voice, and I went back, I turned it back and read it as soon as I kind of had that thought. I read it in that voice, and
Yeah,
it was like that is exactly where Sanderson was going here, and that's why he doesn't get that. He was making him Jack Sparrow
that is a great analogy.
when Matt
That
is more
fits
whoever
perfectly.
the Orlando Bloom character was.
Yeah. Um, Matt is Matt is the comic relief because he never stops being the everyman, even as what is happening around him becomes more and more fantastical.
Well, then that's part of his character because his character is, you said every man, but I'm going to say go with the flow. And if you go with the flow, you end up in a lot more adventures. Trust me from my own personal life,
He is constantly incredulous and annoyed at what is happening around them and calling it out and grumbling about it,
but still doing it.
but still doing it.
Hmm.
Um, that is why he is the comic relief. It's not because he's a wisecracker. It's not because he's a joker. Yes, he is introduced as a prankster, and we hear about some of them. The covering the dogs in flour and tricking someone that's a great hunt, catching a badger and going to release it on the green so it'll go crazy, and the girls will get all freaked out and scream. He is introduced as a prankster. We get the scene in Berlon where he uh, knocks the mud onto the white cloaks to take them down a peg.
But
But
this is the problem with modern psychology and modern medicine. That person these days would be diagnosed with ADHD and put on medication. He is open and he is bored. That's why he's the
eh,
prankster. He is bored with
yes,
everyday life.
that's a good point. And to your point about the turning him into Jack Sparrow is failing to understand why he's the comic relief, but just knowing that he is the comic relief made Sanderson turn him into a jester.
Hmm.
He's not
Well,
funny because he's a jester.
and I made two notes here on this concept. It's not Matt for two main things. First of all, he's dissertating on women, which we just spent 10 books where every thought on women with Matt, Perrin, or Rand was the other ones knew more about them.
Yep,
And he's
that's a
going
good
on this
point.
monologue of how well he knows women. When if we were in his head, he would be saying he would make a offhand comment about women, and then in his head he would have said something like, "God, I wish Rand were here. He would tell it like it is." That kind of
He'd know
thing.
how to deal with
We
this.
spent
Yeah,
10 books building that up as like a thing, and we just threw it all out.
it's March 1st. So
All right. Uh, I was being
Gotcha.
sexy, so Heath had to start disrobing for me. Uh,
Exactly. It's not because
but
it's March 1st and so it's 100 degrees in Texas already. Jeez.
also this is where Sanderson's up. We have a friend like this. He's a nerd. He's a nerd. We love nerds, but he's the nerd that is very
So,
subservient to women.
mm,
And and once he finally found a woman, he became someone different. Sanderson just gives me that vibe. He is that kind of nerd. I'm not saying we should be macho and all these things. Macho man. Realistically, look back at the 80s, Macho Man, he was a horrible person, but especially with Miss Elizabeth. But
mm,
I'm not saying that. But at the same time, you can be strong and still be good to women. And Sanderson doesn't get that, I don't think. And Matt, of the three boys, Rand, Perrin, and Matt.
you just nailed it. I don't think we talked about this while we on recording, but we talked about it when I was down there. Why do nice guys finish last? Who was it who said this?
Oh, shit. I know who you're talking about. What did I say? What did the guy
It,
say?
I'm paraphrasing. Nice guys finish last because they should, because they're liars.
Yes, because if someone's the nice guy is lying to you, basically, yeah,
Now it is
and
not
they're lying to themselves too. A lot of
it
times,
is
yeah.
not nefarious like the playa. He's lying to you for his own selfish nefarious reasons, but the nice guy is still lying to you because he's telling you what he thinks you want to
Manipulating you.
hear.
That's the word. He's
He is
manipulating you
manipulating
using
you.
the niceness. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but what I'm saying is Sanderson doesn't get it. He doesn't get this cross-sex uh interaction because Matt's actually the most intuitive one of the three. So yes, you would say, "Oh, that would lead to the monologue." But no, he
Mm.
doesn't think it. But he is. He's the most intuitive of it. But this talk, this monologue, this is something you would find on an incel Reddit board.
But the reason I brought that up is because your point about that intuiting this is the kind of person Sanderson probably is would explain why he can't get Matt, because the reason Matt is Matt is because he's not going to manipulate. He is which is interesting and a little bit contradictory because he can be very
Because
devious.
he's the best at banter. He is the
Yes,
best at wit, and yes, you would think that would be the manipulator, but intent matters.
exactly.
And
But
he's just
but
having a good time, and it just works in his general direction most of the time.
what is he doing when he leaps out of the darkness, calling himself nine kinds of idiots to go rescue some woman he doesn't know, or yelling at Elaine and Nynaeve and Egwene, well, don't expect me to come after you and help you in the dungeons of the Stone of Tyr, and then yelling at what's his bucket? Well, come on, let's go. And go. I mean, he is being bluntly truthful, which is why he's so appealing, both as a character and to women.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because
he wants to be because I learned this in the gym as a coach. I learned this in the gym. He wants to be tricky and fun and all these things, but he's so reactionary that the truth is always what blurts out. And what I learned in the gym, this is where I'm paralleling this is if I have somebody who's got a mental block on how much weight they can do on a certain exercise, we'll just use that example. I'll I used to try to sneak a little bit on the bar and not tell them. And I would always get caught. They would be like, "I see you putting that weight on there. I hear it or whatever." I learned just do it. I just do it like I'm just doing my job in plain sight in front of everybody, not saying a word, and I just put it on there. And for some reason, people's minds just go and they don't see me putting the weight on there. But when you act sneaky, everybody
mm,
gets it. But when you just act natural and you just do it, nobody gets it. Nobody sees it. And that's Matt. He just does it. He just
yeah.
does the thing. Yeah, we've exhausted that. We got to get to work.
Another small technical detail here that I think shows the annoyingness. How many exclamation marks are there in these first 5 pages? I mean, that is another key. It's like writing it all. It drives me crazy. Stop doing that. That is it's cheap and easy, and it's incredibly overused in all the Matt chapters in The Gathering Storm. And I think it's a clue and a cue to where Sanderson just didn't get Matt. And he's trying too hard. Um
So Vannon, I don't have a page number for this because it's kind of a theme in the next few pages.
mhm,
Vannon was a very semi-fleshed character, and that was on purpose because you were supposed to know. I mean, he's a horse thief. You're supposed to have mystery around this guy.
yeah.
But Sanderson tried to make him more human by
Mhm,
adding emotion. So we've got this grudge with the
mhm,
map maker.
mhm,
And I'm like, come on, man. We don't need that. That's I'm wondering if Harriet wrote this because that's what women do.
mm.
Vannon would be appreciative of the good maps.
That's a good point. Yeah, and he would still be, well, you still need eyeballs. I still got to be the head scout, but he would be
But he
appreciative
would
of,
never
"Ooh,
even say
that's
it. He would
nice."
just do the
Yeah,
job
he
and
would
be
just
so
do it.
good at it that Matt would still
Yeah.
continue to use him in that way.
Oh, but before we get too far into that, page 316, because you pointed out the
Oh,
good
you're
in the
you're
Tawan
you're a, yeah,
chapter.
you're our well, my bad was Vannon. Because remember, the good was
Oh,
the humanity of Tuan. My bad was trying to make Vannon
yeah.
more human with
Oh, yeah, here we
feelings.
go.
Yeah.
Vannon has shown up, and he comes back, and it gets worse when he comes back from his little scouting trip.
That's why I
But
said it's kind of a general theme in the next
th
few pages. Yeah.
this exchange here on page 316 between Matt and Talmanes, this is a much, much better. And I thought when I was taking my notes, it sounds strange to say, but again, this is the whole reason this started was to show why the books work and the series totally doesn't. It sounds odd to say that a guy who wrote hundreds of thousands of words, wrote fantasy books that are 2, if not 3 times the length of your average fantasy book, is very economical with his words. But he is. That's why it's so compelling, because every page is doing something. We've just had 5 pages of meandering when we could have just had this page here, this brief exchange of Matt muttering to himself, "I shouldn't have let her go. Talmanes, you gave her your word. And you don't need to say any more than that. You gave her your word." And then he's got the little bit about the big Sanchin fellow. But the main thing is, hey, Matt, I know you and you know you. You gave her your word, you know, but Matt expressing his worry. And then, you know, nothing Matt Talmanes said, Hurley, just that the way you're mooning after her, I'm not mooning, Matt snapped, pulling the lip of his hat down.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it.
to me, this is lazy comedy.
It if it hadn't been for the other 5 pages, I would have been, oh, okay, we're, it's not perfect, but it's Matt. It's how long it took us to get here. I think if you had cut all of that down to just, 1 page, this wouldn't feel out of place. To me, this exchange here is much, much closer to Matt than any of the rest of Matt in this entire book.
Well, this is where Jordan got it and Sanderson kind of didn't. Sanderson thought Matt should be the comedy, right?
Yeah.
And so this is something I've heard Williamson allude to in his because he does public speeches now, but I feel it in my in our classes because I have to lead the discussion every once in a while. If you're doing technical talks, if you're doing substantive talks, it's different than stand-up comedy.
Hmm.
In stand-up comedy, you've got to be funny every second you're up there. With a few moments of setup you can have. You're allowed a few moments of setup, but you've got to at least have a laugh every 10, 15, 20 seconds, somewhere around there. If you're doing a substantive topic, if you get a laugh 4 times in the hour, you're the best speaker they listen to. And Jordan got that. an occasional laugh out of Matt here and there, but it was all substance throughout the book with the occasional moment. The original Star Wars, R2D2 and C3PO were the comic relief, but they weren't always cutting jokes. They were just in bad places and bad situations at the wrong time a lot. That's what kind of Matt is. His funny is just being in a bad situation and then that internal thought of, oh my gosh, why did I do that kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
And Sanderson's trying to be a stand-up comedian with him. He's trying
Yes.
to be funny every page.
And now, so bottom of page 322 on to page 323 is the justification for this. And he tried to explain this after the fact when he was talking about how he wrote Matt and Tolmanes and why he wrote them the way he wrote them. And you get this exchange here where Matt gets all offended that Tolmanes says, "You're acting downright husbandly." So in his mind, Sanderson's justification is that Matt is different because now he's married, not only married, but to a noble and is himself a noble. And these are all the things that for 11 books he has been railing against and saying, I will never. The problem is it's way too brand new rather than just a shift. Yeah, you would be different, but you wouldn't be a different person. You would just shift because things are different now.
This would have worked better if he was in a situation where people were treating him differently.
Yes.
But
Yes.
he's in a situation where people were trying to be normal Matt
That's
Tominese
a good point.
Vannon interaction. If
That
he
is
was in the
why it is
Shanshan
so
court, this would have been more in line.
that is why it is so jarring because Tominus and the band are just treating him like Matt, and he's the one who keeps shouting, I'm not different. Nobody's treating you different, Matt. Why do you keep shouting it? It's I'm not a liar. No one said you were. Why do you keep shouting that? That's making me suspicious.
I
All
had
right.
a I had a, I don't even know why I have beef with this line on 324. I think I do. I don't know if I can verbalize my beef with this line because this is the penultimate of the misunderstanding of Matt. Almost all the way down the second sentence of the second to last paragraph. Tuan probably would have looked at him curiously and then said something that made him feel his shame right down to his boots.
Mm,
Matt is not subject to shame. Matt feels guilt.
I didn't think this was going to come up, but it's what I texted you last night when I was because of the awful
I'm going to admit I was hammering them down with my last night to not have to do homework. So
live action and Avatar the Last Airbender, when I finished that, I had to watch the first episode of the animated show, the real show, to cleanse my palate, which meant I had to continue watching. So I've been watching it. And I've gotten up into the second season, and there's this great line that I had forgotten about from Uncle Iroh, the mentor character. Okay. For Sam who doesn't know, for any of you
okay, I
who
just read the
do know.
text. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, you're putting it into words. Okay.
Yep. So, oh, hold on. We're talking about your balls rotting off here from gangrene. Let me pull
No,
back
it's
up.
my fistula. It's my fistula. We got to name it. We got to name my fistula.
I
It
don't.
actually it actually goes away and then comes back as far as pain. So we might call it like a menstrual cycle here.
All
It's-
right. So the mentor character is talking to his nephew, who he's been trying to gently and gradually lead to wisdom because he is an angry young man. He's
I
a 16
I
year
have a
old.
special chair.
So Prince Zuko is the worst of all worlds. He's a teenager, so he's already rotten. He grew up in privilege because he's a prince. He's got this narcissism and expectation, but then he was literally maimed by his father and cast out. So now he's also dealing with that shame. And in this exchange, the wise Uncle Iroh says, Pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. That's why Matt doesn't have shame, because he's not a prideful guy. He's just a guy.
Is that why I don't feel shame, or is it just because I'm a horrible person?
Little column A, little column B.
Okay, yeah.
But and this is the stark contrast, and why you have the three legs of the stool of Perrin, Matt, and Rand, because they all in in different ways for each other, both parallel and contradict the various character traits of each other. And this is the importance of Matt for Rand, and the in world and as a literary device, this is the importance of using them to mirror each other. Is and we're getting to Rand here in a second in chapter 22, and oh crap, but this is Rand's fundamental flaw.
I feel like since we're, like 150 episodes or 200 episodes removed from this episode, I should bring up the difference between shame and empathy, or shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Because Matt feels guilt. Matt does
Yeah,
not feel shame.
yeah.
And they're two separate parts of the brain, even. Uh, Shame is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and guilt is the dorsolateral.
He
I might
he
be thinking of empathy and compassion there on those brains, but there are different sections of the brain.
that
And guilt is the internal thought of I did something wrong and it hurt other people. So it's a pro-social
mhm.
experience. I did something wrong that I shouldn't have done that led to these bad results.
he
Shame is external. What do people think of what I did?
I we've just nailed it there, because as we said, the band and Tomnes aren't treating him any differently. So why does he keep shouting that I'm not any different? And because that line there, the reason it drives you crazy is because
He
he doesn't
feels
feel shame.
guilty.
He feels guilty because he's worried about her, as he would be anyone, but especially her, in the
Well, but
same
then
way
also
that
we take their interactions. He said Tuan would probably have looked at him curiously and said something that made him feel shame. She never shamed him. She
that's a good point.
confused him.
That's a good point.
She confused him. She flustered him, but she never shamed him. She never
But
even made him feel guilt.
she also made him feel really darn good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. That's where the curiosity comes in. He
Mm-hmm.
needs somebody that takes him off his feet a little bit. That's why he needs these battles the way they are. That's where he thrives. And when you thrive, that dopamine is flying through your system.
Yep.
And
Yep. And you ready to move on?
yeah, we,
Because
we have to, because I could do two
we got to
hours on
hurry
that
up.
one
Oh
line
yeah,
right there.
this I was
Yeah.
trying not to get bogged down. That's why I didn't have too many notes on chapter 20, because I figured you would have plenty to say. I have more in chapter 21 because now we shift to Perrin and Fail, and it's clear that he gets Perrin more because he
He
has
just
much more
he
economy
just
of
fumbled
words.
filed so bad though.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly, but put a pin in that for a second, because the my first point is that uh the opening section there, the what is it? It's like 2.5 pages, I think, before it switches to Fail's point of view.
Yeah, in the Wolf
Um,
Dream.
yeah, just 2.5 pages, not 5.5 pages of meandering Jack Sparrowness. He clearly gets Perrin better, and this makes so much more sense now after the fact, knowing he said that himself, because he's able to be much more economical with his words and get his point across.
It's
Um,
it's like sales. When you know your product, you speak less. When you're
there's
when you're
yeah,
uncomfortable, you oversell. You keep talking, and even when the other person's about to hand you the credit card, you add another sentence. It's that's the
that
way he is with Matt.
oh, that was our experience the other night. We had a sales guy come through. We ended up buying, but I didn't want to be rude and say, dude, you could have cut that sales pitch in a third. He was here for 3 hours, man. And I'm like, look, intellectually, I understand why every point and every step was there for you to make that sale, but you got to cut that down, because I can't imagine I can't imagine other people would have sat here for 3 hours. And if they did, they would have said, okay, but we're not buying. So you would have just wasted 3 hours or you would have been kicked out of their house, man. You gotta cut it down, dude. Um,
Well, you could take a good look at a bull's ass by
no, wait, it's gotta be your
it's got to be
ass.
your bull,
No,
the
wait.
butcher, the butcher's ass.
That's why it's one of the top 20 movies of all time. Anyway, um,
I quoted it in the gym the other day, and no one knew what I was talking about.
it's
Someone
just
said something
depressing.
about being awkward, and I said, "Awkward? We're gonna do all kinds of awkward things together. Wait till Christmas." And they didn't know what I was referencing.
Brothers don't shake hands, they got a hug. Um, uh, Carrie, my wife is probably very confused that every time we go to your house, I open the door and say, "Ah, you must be Samuel." And ultimately, she is probably tired of me doing that. Anyway, um, so I'm wondering, to your point about Fail, about not getting her, I'm actually wondering if this may be sacrilegious to say to you other nerds out there who all three of you who are watching us, but does Sanderson actually get Perrin and Fail better than Jordan did? Because I almost feel like, and I referenced this last Perrin chapter, that it almost feels like he's trying to rescue the slog. That Sanderson is doing yeoman's work here to reconcile the slog for the fans. Because, so for instance, on page 326, he's in the wolf dream, he's running around, and Hopper makes the point that at other times before, you've just gone charging headlong in like a young cub. And now you're you're not listening to me. Like you want to know all the whys and you want to know all the steps instead of I'm just telling you what to do. Let's just go do it. And now you're being stubborn about it. And I think that may partially be, but there's still a contradiction here because at the end of the parent section, he's ready to just, okay, well, you won't tell me what I want to know, so I'm just going to go find a new teacher. So there is a contradiction there, but I
Or
wonder
yeah,
if,
he's willing to just go forward on his own, but he's not
yes,
willing to just go forward with
mm-hmm.
Hopper. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also, I think, a clear parallel here between Perrin and Luce Theron, or Perrin and Luce Theron, Rand and Luce Theron, and Perrin and the Wolf. I think that is the obvious literary device here of what you're supposed to be seeing is the two of them trying to grapple with this similar situation.
Well, everybody's got duality.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great Slipknot song too, by the way. But that's what it's about too. So duality, everybody's got duality, and we get it with Matt too. Horribly done by Sanderson, but we get Matt as the rascal. We get Matt as the laissez-faire, living, just let me live kind of person, but also honorable and chivalrous. So there's a duality there. They don't seem to go together, but they go
Mm-hmm.
together perfectly. Perrin and the Wolf, if we got Perrin from book 4 and the Wolf from book 4, went together perfectly. If we get Rand and Luce Theron, we actually get a perfect leader because you have the shepherd. You want to make Fisher King and Jesus references, you know, the shepherd and the aristocrat in one. So we have the guy who knows how to handle power, but the guy who's humble. And so that duality works together for the perfect leader. So Jordan was playing on this. Sanderson fumbled these things a lot.
Yes.
And I think you're right. He's trying to bring it back because Perrin became over meticulous in rescuing Fail
Mm-hmm.
in his single-mindedness. But we're in a free-flowing world, and Perrin is almost chaotically stubborn here.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's he needs the wolf to get back on track of I can't be single-minded in what I'm doing. I have to, because the wolves were telling him to leave File. You lost your sheep.
Yes.
We need you to go on because the great hunt is coming.
Losing your mate is a part of life's cycle. You move on.
Yeah, and so he still doesn't understand the great hunt is coming and he needs to be there. He understands to some degree because he's looking for teaching,
Mhm.
but he doesn't understand this is the Miyagi moment here. Hopper is like paint the fence. And Perrin's like, but I'm not learning how to fight. Wax on, wax off,
Well, see, but this is where I wonder if Sanderson gets Perrin better than Jordan, even because he does seemingly have that revelation at the end when it switches back to his point of view for like a page and a half there, where he's lying there looking up in the darkness, thinking, I've got to do all these things. I've got to learn the wolf dream. I've got to find Rand and I've got to help him. I've got to figure out how I'm going to deal with Fail because I now know that as much as I don't like it, I can't keep her out of danger. So how do I do this? How do I reconcile this? So he seems to get it. As stubborn and dumb as he's being at the beginning of the chapter, at the end of the chapter, he kind of seems to get it. And I don't know necessarily, no spoilers, but just looking ahead, I don't know necessarily that it plays out that well, but I at least see the intention of what was trying to be done with Perrin.
Yeah, and so this one I'm going to give Sanderson a little bit of a pass because I think this is the big fumble on Jordan's part. He's Mahomes. He throws an interception every once in a while, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the slog, there was a big hole to pull out of. I don't know if this was the right direction to do it, but it at least okay. I don't know if this was the right destination, but it is at least the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant to
Yeah.
say.
All right.
Now,
Well,
with what my ideas on, let's pause for a second, and then I'll give you my ideas on Fayu.
yeah. All right. A little hiccup there, so I could take my pants off so we could keep going. Because 2 days ago, it was 38 degrees and the wind blowing hard out of the north. Yesterday, it was 42 degrees and drizzly, and today it's 65 degrees with not a cloud in the sky, so I'm melting.
Yeah, we're a day behind you, so we'll be that way tomorrow.
Yeah. Now,
Because we,
now
we
I'm
got up a little bit, but then it's gonna drop tonight, and then
yeah.
which my plants are confused. Though I have a lot of volunteer peppers. I have to thin them out and it's hard because I don't know which ones are growing because they're just fallen peppers from the plants that were there before.
Uh-oh.
So
Yeah.
I do want some good mammoth jalapenos this year because I love stuff jalapenos. But
Oh yeah, Texas Twinkies. Okay.
yeah,
So,
my
uh,
fistula will just have to be angry at me because I love them. But
I'm
yeah,
curious if the 'cause I'm really wondering what your problem with Fail is here, and if it's going to be the exact reason I actually like her here.
okay. So here's how I'm going to preface this. Unlike the Matt chapter, the dialogue was written really well here, I think.
Hmm.
But her internal thoughts were, I thought, just not in line with the last 10 books. Page 330, if you got something for before that, stop me. Uh, but Malden had opened her eyes. That paragraph. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, so she's talking about in that paragraph how she didn't get it, what being a leader was and all these but we got from her own point of view that she already knew that. In
Well,
fact, she was trying to get Perrin to be more that way.
I see what I took from that passage. My note here actually is that this is just her growth as a person because this is being the team captain versus being the coach.
Yeah, but except she specifically says this was my mistake with Perrin.
Where is that? So,
She actually felt a stab of guilt for the times she had lorded over Perrin, trying to force him or others to bend to her will.
mm,
She never did that. She was a spoiled, petulant little brat at times,
no, she
but
kind of
she
did that when she would lose her temper. And again, I wonder if this is Sanderson trying to rescue the slog because to me, this is who Fail should have been in A Crown of Swords.
Okay, so
after
you're
their
saying this is guilt
reconciliation.
over that second go round
Yeah,
where they were
after
fighting.
that reconciliation after Dumais Wells, and then they have that reconciliation, and then she goes back to being the uh angry, bitter, vindictive wife. Where well, if you don't know, I'm not telling you. She goes back to being that caricature.
Hmm. Which you might be right about Sanderson trying to rescue that because she basically tells him now, if I'm not
Yes.
jealous, how do you know I love you?
Yes.
You know.
Which is still in keeping with character of her and of what little we know about Saldean women and Saldean culture. That is now what is a little bit out of character is her saying it outright.
Hmm.
But it
But the
does make
dialogue was
sense.
good. The dialogue was good
Yes.
and well written. It was her internal thoughts that made me kind of
Mm-hmm.
check out a little bit almost.
Well, her internal thoughts that I noted that were kind of funny were much like when Min that we talked about last time, when Min is thinking about, well, what woman doesn't want to be um oh, what was the word that she used? Uh Overcome or overpowered or something like that. It is the way Min is thinking about being with Rand in their intimate moments. And she has a similar thought here. Um that once again it's time for Sanderson to get canceled. Um, but I think the exchange here is, see, 329 is why I think it 330 works, is because when Perrin flat out tells her, I didn't sleep with Verlaine, and she says, I know, and she means it. And he's confused and annoyed because he doesn't say, but she still smells jealous. And that's her point. Well, of course I'm jealous, but that's
Well,
not a bad thing.
and Sanderson, he was almost on the right track, but he could have been better about this. And I don't know if Jordan would have got this right either.
Hmm.
But what I think Jordan understood and had in the story was it doesn't matter that he slept with her, it's that everybody else thinks it.
Yes.
And so she talks about everybody telling her, but she doesn't have that internal thought of, yeah, that doesn't matter. You don't get it. You don't get the fact that the impression is what upsets
Where
me.
is it? Here it is. Yeah, so it's at the middle of page 329. That's a good point, and this should have been part of her thoughts because we're in her point of view here. Uh, dear sweet blunt Perrin, I know you didn't, she said consolingly. She'd heard the rumors. Virtually every woman she'd talked to in the camp, from Aes Sedai to servant, had pretended she was trying to hold her tongue, yet spilled the same news. Perrin spending a night in the first of Mayan's tent. Yeah, once again, Sanderson canceled. But yeah, that's how women are, and that should have
Well,
been part of that thought
and
process.
the sad thing is, and this is where her thoughts could have played that out a little bit better. Those women making those comments weren't trying to bring him down. They were trying to
Exactly.
bring her down.
I'm not mad at you. That's not what you're smelling. I'm mad at them. And
I'm mad at the situation.
I'm annoyed. If I'm annoyed at you, it's because you let yourself get put in this situation.
Yeah. And you didn't do whatever, you know, I intuitively know how to do because I'm a woman, but I don't get that you don't know how to do because you're a man
Hmm.
because I can't cross sex mind read on how to actually stamp that down properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Do we have
I,
to label yet another episode cross sex mind reading?
probably. I mean, that's so much of what Perrin and Fail have been the entire series, even
Which
with
was
Jordan.
fun in book 4.
Yes.
It was actually exciting in book 4. I was horny for both of them. It was like get it together, guys.
It's why
Yeah.
that ranks at or near the top with most nerds that I've talked to. Most fans of
Hmm.
the series, book 4 is one of, if not the favorite of theirs. You know, for me, I kind of go back and forth between it and Dragon Reborn, just depending on the mood I'm in. Um, there's there's more to this though than on on page 331 where he so after that, and then he comes right out and says, um, so at the top of 331, this is what both of them we talked a little bit about before because they were thinking it, and now Perrin says out loud because he's dear sweet blunt Perrin. Um, whatever he did, whatever you did to survive, it's all right. You big ox, she said, thumping a fist on his chest, causing him to grunt. What are you saying? That it would be all right for me to be unfaithful just after you were so concerned to tell me that you hadn't been? And once again, you get what we're not supposed to talk about, which is the difference between men and women. That it would be different. It was different. And this is something we talked about quite a bit with poor Roland, and that you get reinforced here, which is just a few lines down. Um, where is it? Yeah, so a couple paragraphs down. Well, that wasn't true. They had asked for much, but had demanded nothing. That's what makes what's about to happen here in this chapter when they have their little memorials, when the women have their little memorial ceremony. That's what makes it so poignant. And that's why I feel sorry for the idiots who can't get the Roland story. Is it is an absolute tragedy because of that line right there. They asked for much, they demanded nothing.
So this is kind of, we talk about duality. This is one of the times where I think in some of our social conversations, I almost sound like I contradict myself because I'm very protective of women because of background and history and everything, upraising. But this is this is very indicative of our times right now because he is bending over backwards to show he wasn't unfaithful there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's understandable if she was because of power dynamics. And what we see in modern days is man unfaithful, especially in suburban America. Oh my God, he's horrible. The rumors go through the entire, the whole city, and that's why they broke up. Woman is unfaithful. What was he doing?
Mm-hmm.
Was he abusive? Was he neglecting his family? Was he a workaholic? Da, 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 da. You get that double standard even in this day and age where women have all of this, freedom and authority at this point. If the man is unfaithful, it's always he's a horrible person. If the woman is unfaithful, it's because of the man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like
I
that's the one thing I struggle with because I try to be nuanced and separate the two things, but
where is it? I think that's part of your problem with this Fail section is where Jordan was a better writer. It's his technique of writing from a point of view. He was able to show you that a person was lying to themselves
mhm.
without making it obvious, because you obviously, I mean, sometimes we realize, oh, I'm lying to myself. The overwhelming majority of the time, we lie to ourselves all the time, and we don't or won't admit it, won't recognize it.
You want to
There,
know the evolutionary psychology
uh,
explanation for that?
no, but
It
go
actually
ahead and tell
makes you
me
a better
anyway.
liar because if you convinced yourself,
Yeah,
then there is no tell.
it's
You're not showing your hand in
it's how
poker.
the Aes Sedai get around that oath.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If you internally have convinced yourself that what you're saying is the truth, even though it's a lie, then you are a much better
but
liar than the person who knows it's a lie.
so in her thought here about Roland, and this is why she can't tell Perrin the full truth, is because of what it would do to him, because how much it would hurt him to know that I killed someone who was actually helping my wife while she was captive.
And she's not wrong.
And she's not wrong, but
Yeah.
she's also partially lying to herself
Hmm.
because she knows that the other reason she can't tell the whole truth is because she was tempted. And as we talked about, in Knife of Dreams Across the Twilight, whenever that was, That's a big deal. That is a much bigger deal to her, to a woman, than it would be to a man. And you see a little bit of that though here, jumping ahead. Where am I? 335. So he doesn't do it quite as artfully as Jordan does, but you do see an element of that realization that I'm lying to myself when they're having their little memorial ceremony here. And where is it? Um uh but that made it more tragic. Fail steeled herself to keep her eyes from tearing up like Lucille's. She hadn't loved Roland, and she was glad that Perrin was the one who had survived the conflict. But Roland had been an honorable man, and she felt dirtied somehow that his death had been her fault. And then she thinks about her father, the general, had taught her this as a girl, that sometimes you end up having to kill someone you thought of as a friend, or at least were fond of to some degree, simply because you're on opposite sides of the battlefield. And she hadn't understood that until now, because she hadn't had to live it until now. And in a lot of ways, what I think this scene is the female version of that conversation between Gawain and Sleet of, no one made a good decision that day because there were no good decisions to be made that day.
Oh, Perrin made a good decision.
I
He
meant,
he rescued his wife
yes,
and he killed the
yes,
guy who was attacking him.
but
Roland made the good decision. He tried to kill the guy who was coming after Fail. They made good decisions.
no, my comparison there is between Fail and Gawain.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
That for them there were no good decisions, or there were only hard choices.
Now let's armchair quarterback this. Okay, so we started with Perrin in the Wolf Dream trying to not be hasty.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to Fail in this scene. Switch the order. Fail's honest about Roland, and that's why Perrin won't run first.
Hmm.
Because being hasty caused him to kill a good man.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. That actually would have worked,
That would have worked very well.
but it would have been hard to justify Fail actually telling him that, actually being honest, um, for all the
uh,
reasons that she thinks in her head
they could
and
have had a
doesn't
barrel
think.
lane discussion that led
Yeah.
to that. Because this discussion they just had could have led to that.
Or you know, he's still so paranoid about her that, yeah, I trust you, but I can't let you out of my sight because I'm so scared of losing you again, that he followed her. And
Mm-hmm.
with his senses, he doesn't have to be that close to see and hear what's going on. So he could have seen and heard,
He could have, yeah, seen the whole thing. Yeah.
and then she wouldn't even have to tell him. He would just hear and infer.
Yeah. Yeah. I killed the guy that was protecting my wife.
That's actually a really good point. That would have made it work even better, especially if, my hypothesis on Sanderson trying to rescue the slog is real. And it would also make the end of the chapter, when we switch back to Perrin's point of view, it would have made it that much more impactful, where we have just half a page here of him lying in the dark thinking. And I had this thought here, and I'm curious what you think. There's a line here as Perrin is going through, these are the things I have to do. And he's trying to figure out, as he says at the bottom there, three problems. He would face them and he would decide, but he would consider them first, because that was what he did. A man was a fool to make decisions without thinking first. Um, but let's see, where is it? But up above that, he has the thought of, a man had to do hard things, whether on purpose or on accident. I think Sanderson/RJ gives us a really interesting dynamic and dichotomy between men and women. A man has to do hard things. From Fail's point of view, and the women that are there with her at that little more memorial service, they have to feel or shoulder hard emotions.
Hmm.
Because to each individually, those are equally hard, troubling, difficult things. What they're having to deal with. They wouldn't necessarily see that because of the mind different, the male female mind difference. But I think that is a truth of male versus female thinking. Yes, no, maybe.
Uh, yeah. Uh, I don't know. I think you're right in just kind of the general theme of things. Men have to do hard things. Women are it's subversive what they do. I think I've heard it called the three S's. The subversive, what is it? Stealthy, subtle, and I can't remember what the third S was. Oh, now I've got a kung fu movie in my head. We are the SSS school. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to. Was that Fearless Hyena?
I think so.
Because it was different things if you join and if you don't. It was like we're strong, we're sturdy, and we
Yeah.
we strike. And then if you don't join, it's you stupid for not joining.
Yeah, I think that's Fearless Aida.
Yeah. No, it was I don't know. It's this one, like I said,
So I will admit, while you mull that over, I
yeah.
should admit because in having conversations with a woman on a regular basis, I that could have a negative skew to it. That's not to say that you aren't doing something. What Fail and Alejandre and Lucille and the other one, Arella, they are doing something. That is a thing that is being done. But for a man, when we say do, we mean something tangible. We mean something we can grab hold of and fix. Okay. And what from Fail's perspective, from that group of women, they are doing a hard thing, but it is mostly internal.
Yeah, this is where English language is failing us here. So when a man says, I'm going to fix the porch, their mind says, I'm going to tear out the broken part. I am going to put in the new beams. I'm going to put this board here and I'm going to use screws instead of nails this time and blah, 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 blah. When a woman says, I'm going to fix the porch, they envision what the porch should look like. That's where they start.
Mm,
And then they kind of expect things to fall into place along the way. And that's where the man comes in because they're like, well, we have to do this, we have to do that. And that's a beautiful relationship if you can get it right. But right now, Perrin and Fail are not getting it right. I think what jumps out at me in that last little bit is Fail is doing all of these things, and Perrin has that looming over him of trust that the whole camp thinks that she shouldn't trust him.
mm,
But what does he do when she's missing? He thinks
mm,
about what's next and falls back asleep
mm.
because he completely trusts his wife.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of trust,
Are we gonna power through
how we
22?
get to Rand? Oh boy. All right. So we start off from Simmerhaj's point of view here, and there's a couple of interesting things. The first thing to jump out at me is when she's thinking, how had she lost control so quickly? I think this is supposed to be an obvious parallel with what is about to happen to Rand, because Simmerhaj wasn't strong; she was hard. So when she broke, she shattered. Um, the other interesting thing that jumps out to
Well, and
me,
she didn't learn though. This is
mm,
this is where this. Yeah, you use the word parallel, but it's only just so. They're
Mm,
going down the same path, but how they drive the car is different. Her statement, "I will kill her." Her response is revenge.
mm.
So that's the difference, I think.
Well, there's also a foundational difference there that we'll get to in a second. But the other interesting thing from this bit of Simmerhaj's point of view is when Shaidar Heron shows up and says, Shaidar Heron, the Dark One, says, you were to capture the boy. So was Simmerhaj always to be sacrificed? Or had she captured him successfully, was someone else going to be sacrificed to get Rand to do what he does here? Because I think the plan with the domination band was always get him to cross a line or get him to go up to a line that will break him so that he will embrace my power and become my vessel, the Dark One.
Oh, obviously, that's what the box was about. That's why Galena was in charge of the box. That was her job.
That's a good point. This is set up all, 6 books ago.
Yeah, Masana was guiding Galena.
And it's why he's thinking about the box once the collar gets snapped around his neck.
Yeah, from a trope standpoint, Semirage should have been in charge of the box, and this would it would have ended in book 6 because the Dark One won. But the yeah, Masana sent Galena to do exactly what Chider Heron is talking about.
Mm.
And when she failed, Semirage tried to do the same thing, or was supposed to do the same thing, and almost killed him, and that's why they're pissed off.
All right.
And Shidar Heron is, to me, the problem with Shidar Heron is he's kind of he jumps in when you need a plot point kind of recorrected.
Yeah.
He's like Bail Doman. He's the Dark One's version of Bail Doman.
We know from what was said before and when we've seen him that as the Dark One's prison weakens, it becomes easier for him to project himself out into the world and for longer. But it is a bit of a plot device because we don't actually see that very much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we do see him. We know that his prison is very weak now, and we see him taking some very definitive action way away from Shao Gul right now. So there is that. It would have been something to sprinkle in a bit more here and there so that it doesn't become a potential contrivance. All right, so jump to page 344 because I think this is my next couple of notes here are we are setting up Rand breaking. And so at the top of page 344, we have Rand thinking, I have to destroy them. He thought all of the Forsaken, and I must do it for good this time. I must be hard. Except that Min didn't want him to be hard. No, she does. We just heard that last time. Giggity. Wait, no, canceled. Double canceled. Canceled then because from Min's point of view, but from Rand's point of view, this is why Min, M-E-N, need women. He didn't want to frighten her of all people. There were
Peeper.
no people. There were
If he was
no
a peeper, he would frighten her.
there were no games with men. And I love this line here. This is a great way to phrase this. There were no games with men. She might call him a fool, but she did not lie. And that made him want to be the man she wished him to be. But did he dare? Could a man who could laugh also be the man who could face what needed to be done at Shal Ghul? What Sanderson and Jordan are doing here and have Jordan has been doing for 11 books with the dynamic between Rand and Min from the very first time they met is this idea that behind every great man is a great woman. Why? Because women make men want to be better rather than just sit around and be the male lion of, hey, I want to eat, screw, and go pick a fight. No, now I actually want to protect a territory and raise the next generation.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to pick on lions there.
I just think they're such a great example, better even than primates, of men at that this is what toxic masculinity actually is using masculinity for its most base effects.
Let me defend the male lion here. Okay, so if the male lion does not protect its pride from other male lions, which is what you're talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
What happens when the other male lion comes in?
It will kill all the cubs.
Infanticide.
Hmm.
That's a pretty big ask.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fighting the other male lions is harder than taking down the game.
Hmm.
That. I mean, I don't think I need to speak any further to that.
The
Yeah. Don't self short the guy who wants to sleep all day so he can fucking beat the shit out of the guy who's going to kill your babies. I mean, that's a pretty big ask. Yeah.
the point of the distinction being the instinct versus the desire versus the conscious effort versus wanting to actively change your programming because this person is worth it.
Yeah, and this was a good setup that never paid off
How so?
because Rand, we're getting a spoiler territory.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll put a pin in that for later.
yeah,
Um, it it does pay off to a degree immediately here. So now we jump forward a few pages, and on page 348, he's having this dialogue with Min that was a few pages ago an internal monologue because they're talking about that Min is prodding him, is trying to make him that better person. And so the top of page 348, is this really a time for laughter? He asked. Would you have me be happy while children starve and men slaughter one another? I should laugh to hear that Trollocs are still getting through the ways. I should be happy that the majority of Forsaken are still out there somewhere, plotting how best to kill me. This is the road to Moradin Nietzsche. This is this is setting up. Yeah, he knows and he thinks about it and he wants to be better for her, but he can't because he's so obsessed with the first half of Nietzsche and he didn't finish reading the damn book. And
I just had a sacrilegious thought.
so,
I wonder if the showrunners got one thing that I'm just thinking about that Sanderson didn't.
hmm,
I put it in spoiler talk though.
oh, it's a spoiler thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So jump forward several more pages, and after all this stuff happens with Elza and Simirhaj, and so page 354. Okay. Uh he didn't read the second half. He just read God is dead. So I'm gonna I'm gonna find a new God that just happens to be the dark one because here is this power and I can use it and I will. And Luz Theron, the madman, is the one saying it would be better off if we were dead
Hmm.
because we have touched this, we have used it. We are his now. We are his creature.
Okay, so we'll give Sanderson credit here because it seemed minor at the time, but there's a nice little parallel with Beslin and Tuan and Rand and this new power in front of him right now.
Huh. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I will say just
I'm gonna
back
I'm
up
gonna I'm
just
gonna
a,
give him the benefit of the doubt. He did it on purpose.
back up just a second. I love this line when Simirhaj is forcing him to choke Min to death, to strangle the woman he loves with his own hands. Those beautiful dark eyes of hers watched him, loving him even as he killed her. That is why Min is such an incredible character because she knows what's going on here. And even though Rand is about to break, it doesn't break her. Because as far as she knows, she's about to die. She doesn't care. She's going to make sure, even if all she can do is just by looking at him, make sure that Rand knows that she still loves him. And that's why she's such an awesome character.
That hits.
Don't it though?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Oh.
And then when we see Rand broken, and as far as he's concerned, he's not broken. He's finally whole. And that's what's so terrible about what just happened here. Is so the very end of this chapter, page 356, he's thinking about it, and it is he had entered a place like the void that Tam had trained him to seek so long ago. But within this void, he had no emotion, none at all. Foreshadowed in book 2. And we are in book 12 now, because that's what Lanfear was trying to get him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, all the way back in book 2, Lanfear was taunting him, teasing him, tempting him. I've heard that there are some who can enter the void and enter the oneness and stay there constantly. And at the time, that was both weird and scary. And now he's there.
Which is why I'm so afraid of pop music. It's designed to appeal to your left brain. Most of
Hmm,
your emotion is dug into your right hemisphere.
interesting.
And we're
I didn't
being
know that.
pulled further and further away from feeling emotion, but at the same time giving messaging that we should always be happy.
Hmm.
And look how that's turning out for us.
Swell. Everything's grand. I kind of skimmed over it, but I don't think it's an accident that right before, literally the second before the collar was snapped on him, what was he doing? He was arguing with Min in an irrational way. He was he was fighting with himself of starting to suspect even Min, because she's been talking to Katsewin. What have you been saying to her? She's been using you to manipulate me. It is at that exact moment that this happens. I
Yeah,
don't
and
think that's an
we're
accident.
getting kind of throwbacks to book 3 Rand,
Hmm.
where he started to
Yeah,
become suspicious of everything.
and he starts to act incredibly maniacally, such that he runs off like a lunatic all on his own,
Well,
and we
and
don't see him very much in
cuts
that
the
book.
woman's head off without even any proof. It
Hmm.
turns out he was right, but
I
he
don't
had
think
no
he
proof.
was.
No,
No, no,
because there was
no.
a gray man there.
We talked about it at the time. I think what he was sensing was the gray man, and he just killed them all.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, but yeah, that actually furthers my point that this was where he was when he was the lost boy.
Yeah. And now he's lost. But what is so scary is that,
Is he's lost and super powerful.
well, but he thinks he's finally whole. He thinks he's
Hmm.
finally achieved what it was he's been trying to get to this whole time.
Which means Ishii/Morden has succeeded
Hmm.
because that's exactly what Ishii's goal was in book 3, book 2, book 3, book 1. Uh, and then there was the break until when did Morden come in? Book 6?
5 or 6, yeah.
Because we had to be there in 6 because he crossed streams with him at the end of that book with
No, that was 7.
Samael.
That was a Crown of Swords. So I think
Oh
it
yeah,
was
6
six
was
that he.
chaos. Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
he
That's right.
first shows up in 6, but I don't think we learn who he is until 7, because I think he first shows up. I think, yeah. I think he's the one that is secretly watching Samael and Grendel,
Oh, okay. I thought it was
and
Shider Heron.
and we're not told. Shidar Heron is watching him. Shidar
Interesting.
Heron is watching Morden.
Okay, so let's
All
go to
right,
spoilers, I guess.
yeah. Spoilers. It's another Rand chapter after that, but we've already spent a good while on this, and I don't know how much time we need to spend while Rand is at the bottom, because it's now that we've spent a good deal of time about how he got there, Yeah, now lots of awful things happen and he's does bad things and
Uh, I
stuff.
can speak from it from kind of an addiction standpoint
Mhm.
because I think I brought this up when we first started this series on the Wheel of Time books that I think the power has been a very big parallel to addiction,
Mm.
and I think we can bring that back because it does
Yeah.
bring out the darkest part of you. It brings out the most extreme parts of you, I will say.
That's a good
So
point because when
yeah.
Moraine is first teaching Egwene about the power, she warns her that's dangerous.
Hmm.
Yes, your senses are heightened. Yes, you feel good. Yes, this power is amazing. And Rand feels that when he embraces the true power. And it's this, he feels it coursing through his veins, is what he thinks. And ooh, that's not a good thing.
All right, so now we're going to spoilers. So ideals are isomorphic. If you have not read through to the end, I'm about to spoil a part of the end, based on your comment. And then I've got we what did we put a pin in? Rand and his turnaround,
Hmm.
uh, and then my parallel or my thing where Matt could have been a big part of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to I was convinced I'd catch up with you guys soon, but as soon as RJ introduced Tuan in Winter's Heart, I had to put the book down for the first time. The thought of having to get through descriptions of Shanjin Code of Honor intricacies after I suffered through the fucking ale customs for so long is nearly unbearable. Uh, okay, so again, I had made the comment that you've gotten through the worst of that. Everything else is surface level at this point
Yeah.
with the Shanjin. But this is why the Shara coming in at the end with the Mandrid was kind of BS because we had to have a one chapter crash course on their hierarchies and their how they do things and their whole culture to introduce a whole thing that was what a twist, the M. Night Shyamalan version
Yeah.
of Wheel of Time. So it was yet another culture to learn so you can kind of understand how
Radically different
things,
from
yeah,
everything else we've seen
yeah,
before.
radically different. It's the guy has to eat the brain because he's with the cannibals giving the interview, you know. It's so different. So that was a disappointment in the writing, and I don't know if it was Jordan's plan from all along, or if it was Sanderson, or if it was Jordan's plan from all along, but we were supposed to have 3 books of introducing them. That
Hmm.
could have been another part of it. So
Yeah.
that was one thing that was really annoying about the end for me.
But and that's part of my frustration with the Matt chapters, especially the Matt chapters in this book, is that's why I kept harping on there's 5 rambling pages here that could have been done in a couple of paragraphs. We spend a lot of page time on Matt that could have been spent elsewhere.
Hmm. Or could have been just one less book.
Either way, either way, it would have made that economy of words would have made for a more satisfying ending. All right, so what else we got?
Ran in his turnaround. My disappointment that we have a lot of setup that Min would be a big part of it,
Yes,
and she was a big part of his going further into it, but then she never was a big part of his coming out of it. We
yes,
we we talk about it was Tan, right?
yeah. I we'll talk more about it when we get there, but I mean there are some triggers, but basically he goes off alone, sits down on a mountaintop and thinks and comes out of it. That's way too Hollywood for me. That's not, and the reason the books work is because it's real life. That's why I like to point out,
I think
you know, when
Jordan
the
might
where the
have written
characters are
that one
flawed.
because he might have been pulling from Bodhidharma, the Buddha.
Possibly,
Yeah.
but there
Uh,
needed to be better setup that got him to the mountaintop.
yeah, I agree with you there, which could have been page space that was wasted on Matt being an idiot.
Yep.
Uh, but where okay, so this is where the series might be getting something right if they go with it. I'm not confident they will, but Matt is the perfect friend to bring Rand out of his funk based on what we were just talking about.
Mm.
Everything, Tuan, remember, everything has to be controlled. Everything has to be controlled. Rand is there. Matt brought Tuan around. Matt could bring Rand around.
Yeah.
And with the series having this inexplicable outside of the books friendship between Matt and Min could be leading to that friendship that could keep Rand in line. Because I'm not confident they're going that way with it, but it could lead to it. So if
Yeah.
you happen to be connected to the show in any way, shape, or form, or know someone who's knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone is connected to the show, say, hey, you can rescue this thing you did with Matt
Mm-hmm.
and Min, who are the favorites of the books, but you made them really irrelevant, stupid people in the shows. You could actually use
Yeah.
that connection you just made to
Yeah.
create a story that yeah, it's alternative to what the books are, but at least it's in a good direction.
I'll talk more about it when we get to Rand's moment of nirvana, but my biggest gripe with it was for several books now, I've been getting, you know, thinking back for the first time, I keep expecting and getting anxious for Rand to either get back his two best friends that he grew up with to help him be the man he needs to be, or since Min's been there and Avienda kind of, but then she doesn't help, bring Min needs to get Elaine and Avienda and say, hey, we're your women. We're, if one of us can't make you be the better man, then all three of us need to work together to make you be the better man. He needed one of those
Yeah,
two
they kind of
dynamics.
retroactively do that at the end.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
like, oh, well, we're all part of this, so we might as well be friends.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it ends.
And those I've kind of griped about the letdown of the boys getting back together and feeling very meh. The girls never even get together, and so there's not even a meh to be had there because
Well,
there's just
until
a
they all
nothing
get together to go just
at the very,
wander
very,
around.
very, very,
Yeah, yeah,
very end, and you're like, wait, what? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's
There needed to be some more setup there with those characters.
yeah, the last book is very Game of Thrones-ish with the finale.
With we just kind of wanted to get done and go move on to other projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is why I didn't like the turnaround with Rand with Tam because he's choking Min to the point that her face is purple.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes it. You see his own head. We see inside his own head. He realizes this and it pushes him further away.
He
When he almost
disassociates.
kills Tam,
Mm-hmm.
it brings him back.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you saying here?
And
What is your message here? That
with Min, it works because in that whole buildup, he's thinking about the box. And so he's disassociating because he has to. And the further he disassociates, then he feels the temptation, the tingle of this
yeah,
new
except Jordan
strange
set it up
power.
different though. Jordan
Right.
set it up different because part of his suffering in the box was the torturing of men.
Exactly. And now he's the one torturing Min.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
No, what I'm saying
I
is
don't think this was the direction it was supposed to go.
the disassociation and the break from strangling Min, that makes perfect sense. And it is wonderful tragedy, but then it seems like a cheap mirror when it happens here in a minute with Tam, and suddenly that fixes him.
Yeah, no, it would have been better if he had been helpless witnessing her being tortured.
No, I like the him being the one because he was helpless because he could because this domination band is even stronger than an Adam. He can't do anything except breathe unless Simmerhaj compels him to. So he was helpless. So it was doubly so because he's utterly helpless and yet technically he's the one doing it. That's to me why it works so well.
Okay, so you're saying the Tam is different because he was doing it while he was not controlled.
Yes. And
That
so
makes sense. Yeah, that
so it's
makes
kind of a
sense.
magical contrivance of, well, wait, where was the buildup? Where was the setup? the payoff doesn't work because the setup is very bleh. But we'll rant more about it when we get there because we're not that far away from it really. So we'll see it in a bit here. Because doesn't that happen at the very end of this book?
Mm,
I'm trying to remember when he
I thought
achieves
it was the
Nirvana.
next one because I mean he's not Nirvana-ish for that long before the end.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Wait, hold on.
nope. Here it is. There's an overlap there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he has this confrontation with Tam, and then he runs off, and then yeah, so there's an overlap between the very last chapter of this book and the first chapter of the next book, where we basically see it from two different points of view. Which that part of it was cool, but the setup to it was we'll get there when we get there. All right, well, I've got to go figure out what I'm going to feed people, and
We are going to have Chinese tonight. Next time you're down, we need to get takeout from Wong's and see how your wife likes it. Because it is excellent takeout, not pricey at all. And that's what we're having tonight because Ben's at a swim meet right now. And I'm responsible for food when they get back. So
all right, well, you should sit down with your Chinese takeout and start watching Avatar: The Last Airbender because I think your kid would like it, and I think you would too.
I almost did last night. But you know, I started watching, we talked about it, Supernatural.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not bad.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be like a Twilighty thing. No, it's actually pretty just kind of genuine, almost mediocre action sci-fi.
Well,
It's
I had stayed away from it because I had heard from several people that it takes several seasons to get into it, and I'm like, I don't have that kind of time to take 3 seasons to get into something that's like a dozen seasons long.
yeah. Well, I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm into it. I've watched 3 episodes over the last 3 weeks,
Mm,
2 weeks, but it's that's actually good for me because I've got 45 pages to write by next Friday for class.
yikes.
Uh, we got midterms, and they're all essay, of course, but that's good for me because then oh, I got a moment to watch a show for 1 hour, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna hit another one and stay up till midnight and lose sleep or whatever. But it's like, oh, that was pretty good, and I can turn it off. It's that kind of show. So I was like, okay, that's good. That's good for me right now. I don't want to get in
Works.
a show that I have to keep hitting the next episode and next episode and next episode
Got
again.
stuff to do.
I've got stuff
All
to.
right.
I've got so much to write. Oh God.
Well, speaking of stuff to do, we will see y'all next week. Not exactly sure what that's going to be because Samo has lots of stuff to do. So I might have to see what I can come up with and we'll just react to it. But
Yeah, and we
I
we
kind of want to
had
talk about RFK Jr. and some stuff to do with that.
yeah, that'll be good. And we had a shit ton more
Oh
views
yeah.
on our last social episode than we normally do.
Yeah,
The
you'd
one,
mentioned
the
that.
one 247 political gender gap in Gen Z. I don't know if it was the title or what, but basically we don't Scott, you're pretty much it, dude. And
Yeah.
it's it I'm kind of curious because the comments are I'm not sure if I'm reading these correctly.
Yeah.
Uh
Well, we'll have to start with a follow up to that then, and then we'll see where it takes
yeah,
us.
first sign of aggression, we will put them in line because that's what women do. Words don't work, fists do. I'm curious of our new audience for some reason. It's most poor people in America are white. What the heck? What the F happened to racism? Poor whites are not worthy. Da 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 da. So I don't know where our new audience is coming from, but they're probably going to hate me.
Yeah, those are interesting comments. I'm gonna have to rewatch to try and figure out exactly when they are commenting on as well. So
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
we'll
so
see.
if you are part of the new audience and you went through our Wheel of Time episode, we might have to open with this in our social episode. But I don't. Do you watch Valuetainment, Heath? With
I watch
Trevor and
clips of
David?
it. Yeah,
Okay, but you know who the panel is, right?
yeah.
So I'm like the Adam, and you're like the Vinny, if you know who those two are. Adam's kind of like the left leaning guy, and Vinny's like the right leaning, but we don't talk over each other. That's the difference. It's kind of the same political leanings, but we don't talk over each other. So you're probably gonna hate me if you're one of those two commenters. And
That'll be fun.
I think we need to get an episode where I can really shine on that. We might have to do another sexy with Sam O time or something along those lines.
All right. Yeah. Let's make everybody a mad now that we had a video get almost 500 views.
Yeah, and I looked back to see if it was our Dax episode, if that had suddenly no, that's still only our Dax episode only has still 6 views.
Yeah.
And just by keywords alone and randomness, that should be more. So for some reason that shadow banned. Just by randomness, putting in Dax reaction video should get us hundreds of views because millions of people put that same
Yeah.
thing in there. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, we will see y'all then.
yeah. All right. Later.